Welcome to South Asia. This is J. Reddy from North America. At South Asia, I target to bring the South Asian history, heritage, geography in the form of maps, images, and icons so that the audience can easily grasp the socio-cultural geographical aspects of South Asia. South of Karakoram Mountains and east of Khyber and Kalat and Kutch and north of Kashmir and west of Kamarupa. In this new series, we will be looking at Punjab. Punjab means different things for different people. There are actually two Punjabs in the world today that not many people are aware. The East Punjab, east of the Radcliffe line, and West Punjab, west of River Ravi. And we will be exploring all these nuances in great detail in the coming videos. I plan to develop a lot of videos on Punjab. That is a very key province in India, South Asia. Even the P part of Pakistan comes from Punjab. Knowing details about the Punjab is very, very critical for a serious student of South Asian history and heritage. In this particular presentation, my target is to discuss about British Punjab. After this presentation, this is titled British Punjab that survived as a political entity from 1849 to 1947, that is till the partition time. 1849 to 1947, the partition time. Nearly 100 years, we can say more or less. And after this presentation, you will get a very good clarity and exposure to lot of historical personalities and events that happened during that part. We'll talk about the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Sher-e Punjab, the Lion of Punjab, and anarchy that followed after the death of Maharaja, and eventually the succession of his minor son, Duleep Singh, and two Anglo-Sikh wars or British Sikh wars were found within short duration, and that led to the Treaty of Lahore. Within a week, Treaty of Amritsar, and 6 months later, Treaty of Bhyrowal. After the Second War, again the Treaty of Lahore, that's the Treaty of Lahore II, and final annexation of the Khalsa kingdom to the British dominion of East India Company. And we will see the prominent leaders that molded the building of British Punjab called Lawrence brothers, senior brother Henry Lawrence and junior brother John Lawrence, and the setting of Council of Regency and then Board of Administration, and after annexation, appointment of Chief Commissioner, like a Lieutenant Governor or Governor of modern times, and various districts and divisions of British Punjab. And within few years, the mutiny broke down at Meerut in Uttar Pradesh, United Provinces, and the Hindustani Sepoys, Punjabi Sepoys, and suppression of the mutiny and eventual starting of Canal colony, large-scale irrigation in Punjab, and settlement of the people from the eastern districts, which are thickly populated, to western district. And addition of Delhi, the Delhi region or Delhi district, from the northwestern province. At that time it was called, that is later changed to the United Province of Agra and Awadh, that is northwestern province at that time. And Singh Sabha movement, Arya Samaj movement, Ahmadiyya movement and Urdu movement, Aligarh movements. And the major important role played by Kahan Singh and his book Hum Hindu Nahin Hai, that is a very good impact on the consolidation of a separate Khalsa identity. And in the intellectual failure to counter those things, we'll briefly allude to that. And the Muslim League, Congress and Unionist political parties in British Punjab, and detachment of the northwestern province, that is called Pakhtunkhwa or Patani speaking districts, and formation of northwest frontier province and elections, and the prominent personalities of that time, Mian Fazli Hussain and Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan, Chotu Ram and Khizar Hayat Khan, these are Unionist leaders, Akali Dal party leader Master Tara Singh, and World War II broke out in 1939 and 1945 poll, the general elections, that is the provincial elections, and increasing Islamic aggression in the Hindu nation, and Congress leadership's pusillanimity or cowardice, and British anxiety to quit India, Bharat, and Britishers' spectator role in the entire events, and final partition and Radcliffe line. That means the dismemberment of British Punjab eventually into West Punjab, that is Pakistani Punjab, and Purbi Punjab, East Punjab, Hindustani Punjab, Paschim Punjab and Purbi Punjab, West Punjab and East Punjab. All these events will be clearly explained to you in this presentation. After this presentation, you will become a very good articulator of the events of British Punjab. Maharaja Ranjit Singh built Punjab for a small principality or called Misl. There were nearly a dozen Misl in Punjab after the collapse of Durrani rule and Mughal rule and Maratha brief intercession in Punjab. We can see the Punjab here. And among which Sukerchakia Misl across the river Ravi, was under the control of Ranjit Singh's family, his father Mahan Singh. After his death, and Ranjit Singh became the ruler. He was born in 1780. And around about 1801, he conquered Lahore and eventually Amritsar and declared himself Maharaja of Ranjit Singh. From 1800 to 1839 June, the Maharaja built the Khalsa kingdom or Sikh kingdom inch by inch on the west side of river Sutlej. It has a Multan province, it is a Kashmir province, Jammu province, Lahore province, and it has Derajat province, it has Patani speaking frontier province, Peshawar, Multan, Lahore, Srinagar, that is the Kashmir, and Attock. These are the prominent Subahs provinces in that. And he died. He had a cordial relations with British East India Company, and British East India Company didn't intervene into the affairs of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Actually, they were waiting very closely for his demise, and they had their own plans, and he died in 1839, and anarchy followed. His son Karak Singh succeeded, and he was the ruler for 2-3 months, and then he was deposed, and his grandson Navanihal Singh became a de facto ruler when his father was under confinement, and By 1940, September or October or so, Nahal Singh, the grandson and very capable leader of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's family, also died when the rooftop fell. And the anarchy followed. A series of regents like Chand Kaur and Sher Singh, Pratap Singh, all came into and they were assassinated. Within 3-4 years, 4 or 5 prominent wazirs, that means next to the Maharaja, chief minister or Devans, were assassinated, and essentially it was a great anarchy. And British started enhancing their cantonment. The British has their cantonment at Ambala, that is close to Uttar Pradesh, United Province, and at Ludhiana, south of Sutlej River, and Firozpur. And there was an anxiety among the Khalsa soldiers of the intentions of the British, and British had fought first Afghan war here, and they snatched a colossal defeat, and British army came through Punjab and to the cantonments, and they need to show some sort of the results after the series of defeats or big defeat in Afghanistan that the East India Company army faced. And all these things coincided and they conquered Punjab 1843, that is almost 4 years after the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. That means essentially they encircled the Sikh kingdom on all sides. And as the Khalsa army became very powerful in Lahore, the rulers were unable to control it, and they let the army go and fight with the British. Their intention was, if the army wins the war, and they can take the credit, and if the army loses the war, the army, Khalsa army, which became more powerful, starting the panchayats, and it was not listening to the divans, wazirs and ministers of the Lahore Darbar. So the events flowed, and the army crossed the Sutlej River, that is the border between the British East India Company Bahadur and Khalsa Sarkar. And eventually a series of battles were found across the river Sutlej, that Aliwal, Budawal, and finally at Sobraon they were decisively defeated. East India Company army moved into Lahore, and the Khalsa Darbar signed the Treaty of Lahore, Treaty of Lahore in 1846 March. It has ceded all the territory south of Sutlej River. It also ceded the territory between the Sutlej River and Bias River, that is called Doab, Bist Jalandhar Doab. Now it has a Kapurthala district, Jalandhar district and Hoshiarpur district. And it has to pay huge indemnity of 1.5 crore Nanak Shahi rupees. And they don't have that much money. They pay nearly 1 crore, and remaining 7 to 50 lakhs of rupees. Excuse me. They have offered, the Khalsa Darbar offered to cede the territories, and the British doesn't have manpower to govern those territories. So what happened? The Sikhs decided to cede the territory east of river Indus and west of river Ravi. These all hilly regions, essentially Jammu region, Kashmir region and Ladakh region, that was under the nominal control of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, ruled by a local leader called Gulab Singh. He is a prominent courtier. His brothers were also prominent ministers at Lahore in the Sikh Darbar, Dhyan Singh and so on, Hira Singh, his nephew. So Gulab Singh came and he paid the remaining of the money, and the British hand over with him by making the Treaty of Amritsar. Treaty of Lahore, Khalsa Darbar shed a lot of territories. Treaty of Amritsar secured Kashmir and Jammu region as an independent principality as Maharaja Gulab Singh as a ruler. That was the treaty made between the East India Company and Gulab Singh. and Khalsa Darbar was not involved because it was not their treaty with the East India Company, because they gave the territory and British lacked the ability to govern the territory, and they gave the territory to Gulab Singh, who was ruling in that area and de facto control of those areas. Then this happened 1846, March and April, and the British are supposed to leave by December 1846, but Khalsa Darbar was not confident that Khalsa army will be under their control, and so they requested the British army to stay more. Again, a new treaty was done in 1846 and almost during the December months, Treaty of Bhyrowal. At that time, the Duleep Singh, the young Maharaja, who was just born like I think 1 or 2 years before the death of Ranjit Singh died in 1839, and Duleep Singh, Maharaja of Punjab, was a very child of 6 or 7 years old. So the East India Company cantonment of troops will stay in Punjab till Maharaja Duleep Singh gets the majority, and they leave afterwards. So in order to do the governance, and the Governor General
sent Henry Lawrence and John Lawrence and top civil military advisors, and Henry Lawrence, the senior brother, was nominated as the chairman of the Regency Council. The Regency was under the control of Dalhousie Singh's mother, Jindan Kaur, and she was deposed and exiled eventually to Benares. Essentially, the kingdom came under the control of British East India Company, with Henry Lawrence, as the chairman of the Council of Regency. After 3 years, the Multan, the insurgency broke, that is in the southern province, and British kept quiet and encouraged it to grow. And finally, within 2 years, the second Sikh war broke. This was fought independently by the local leaders, and Khalsa army or Khalsa Darbar was not at all involved. British, in fact, encouraged it. And after the defeat of the war was found in the western district, like the Battle of Gujarat, Battle of Ramnagar, Battle of Chilianwala, and so on. Afterward, the British governor at that time, Lord Dalhousie, decided to annex the Khalsa kingdom. So the second Treaty of Lahore was drawn, and Maharaja was pensioned off, he was deposed, and eventually he was exiled into the Britain. He was converted into a Christian and married to a British noble family. So essentially he was brought under Western culture, not much understanding of Sikhism or the local Punjabi culture or civilization that much. That is a different story. And Board of Administration was set up, and Henry Lawrence was the chairman of the Board of Administration. And the differences between the Henry and John brothers finally came, and Dalhousie decided to send Henry to the neighbor Rajasthan as a resident in Rajasthan, and appointed John Lawrence as a chairman of the Board of Administration. That was essentially like other designation for a governor or lieutenant governor or chief commissioner. At that time, those nomenclatures were used. This happened in early 50s, and within 3-4 years, the first Sepoy rebellion broke down in Meerut on May 1857, and Sikhs for valid reasons doesn't want to support the Muslim rule, that is the re-establishment of Mughal Badshah Bahadur Shah, because Sikhs suffered extensively under Muslim depredation and Mughal depredation. So they decided to support the British, the Sikh Sardars, the leaders, elites and nobility. So John Lawrence raised a very big army. He disarmed the Hindustani Sepoys or Bengal army. Instead of, he raised the Punjabi army, predominantly containing the Sikhs,
and with that army he captured the Delhi. The fall of Delhi was a major milestone, and that's where the British interest in cultivating or appeasing Sikhs started. This is very, very important, and in the later slides, presentations, we'll discuss about the current events, how they are related with the British decision to pamper the Sikh community or appease the Sikh community. And after that, and the canal colonies, the British start large-scale irrigation projects in India. Punjab was essentially arid land. This southern part, Ismail Khan, Muzaffargarh, and Multan, Montgomery at the time, this jungly region didn't receive much rainfall, less than 300 millimeters or so. Only the districts close to the Shivalik mountains, like Attock, Rawalpindi, Jhelum, Gujarat, and Gujranwala, and Lahore, and Amritsar, Gurdaspur, Hoshiarpur, and Jalandhar, and Ambala. These areas received a good amount of rainfall, good for agriculture. That was in the medieval times. And the British started large canal colonies, digging the canals and diverting the water from the 5 rivers of Punjab. And when these canals were digged, a lot of empty land, the virgin lands were brought under cultivation, and these lands were given predominantly to the Sikhs. And the British government at that time started a language policy. In the initial few years, the language of Punjab was Persian and Urdu, and eventually they replaced Persian with Urdu. That means Urdu was the official language for the education, lower education, and the governments and court and administrative purpose. This is also very critical to understand. That means the Punjabi was not chosen, whereas the British East India Company in other areas, other provinces, presidencies choose local languages. Let's say in Madras Presidency, they used Telugu in the northern districts and Tamil in southern districts and Canaries in western districts. In Bombay Presidency, they used Canaries in Canaries district like Dharwar and Belgaum and Bijapur, Karwar, and they used Marathi in Konkan and Desh and Khandesh, and they used Sindhi in Sindh division of Bombay Presidency, and so on. Whereas in Punjab that didn't happen. They put the Urdu as the official language of the province. That is the British Punjab. That has a serious other implications in during the consolidation of Islam and much alienation and so on. So, and there was, and British has a very strict policy that their soldiers cut the hair, and they were trained properly like that. If you grow the hair, you are dismissed from the employment and things. But for Sikhs, they have given a rescission on that. That means in order to consolidate the externality, there is not much difference between Sikh is a Hindu, Hindu is a Sikh. And most Hindu families, they raised their first son as a Sikh at that time. It's like in India, in South India, we have Sai Baba devotees. Sai Baba devotees are Hindus, and Hindus are Sai Baba devotees, and Hindus are Ayyappa Swami devotees and Ayyappa Swami devotees. So there is not much difference. And so they strictly said that Sikhs after joining should not remove their hair, as the Khalsa says. Sikhism is different from Khalsa. Khalsa is a branch of Sikhism, started by Guru Gobind Rai. And they raised as a separate entities in the army. When they retired, they were given canal colony districts, and their recommendation was taken into offering the employment in the army. So the Sikh leaders, as any other person, start noticing that it is very convenient,
they will be following the religious precepts of Khalsa and getting the employment in the British Army. After retirement, you will getting the Canal colony districts land, some bigas, very good irrigated land in Montgomery district, in Layalpur district, which are the predominant canal colony districts. And so they didn't lose anything. So this economic interest and encouragement by the Britishers played a very important role in consolidation of the Khalsa identity or Sikh identity. Singh Sabha movement was started. That was they claimed is a reform movement, essentially dethroning the whatever attachment they had through the Hindu Samaj, like removing the Mahants and priests in the temples, and essentially is a political ideology doing the religious work, and it's not a spirituality in a sense. These aspects were not brought into serious discussion but by any Hindu scholars, and there was no Hindu intellectualism. It's essentially a failure of Hindus. Still there is no Hindu intellectualism in India explaining the Hindu heritage and culture, and that was a overall great failure. The consolidation of Khalsa identity and all other versions of the Sikhs like Udasis and various Sikh followers, Nirankaris, all the eventually terminated, essentially contracted, and essentially everybody started becoming a Khalsa Sikh. And to certain extent, a sense of separatism and was also inculcated, even though majority of the Sikhs are still closely bonded to the parent body, Hindu society in Punjab. So the Kahan Singh was the chief minister of a small principality called Nabha, that is in East Punjab today, a few kilometers west of Patiala, that between Patiala district and Ludhiana district, and he wrote a book, Hum Nahi Hindu Nahi Hai, meaning we are not the Hindus, we are separate people. So this played a very important role in the consolidation of Sikhism. A type of intellectual veneer was given for the creating a separate identity, hostile identity of Khalsa Panth against the parent body. And as diarchy started and local autonomy self-government started in 35, general elections were conducted, and Muslim, Sikh and Hindu land laws, which are constitutionalist, they are the pro-British. In a sense, Congress was also pro-British for a lot of years, even though they later pretended they are very different. It is not. So Unionists were also like that. They were constitutionalist. That means they wanted India gain independence slowly under British control, and a gradual process rather than immediately confronting themselves, confronting with the British government immediately. They are Unionists. They are from throughout Punjab, and they represented predominantly the landlords of predominantly Muslims and Sikhs and Hindus. Their prominent leaders are excuse me, Sir Fazli Hussain, and from Rohtak region in Haryana, Chottu Ram, and from Western Punjab, Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan and Khizar Hayat Khan, and so on. And Akali Dal political party was represented by Tara Singh, and Congress party was also there. Not that much prominent in West Punjab, but it has some support in East Punjab, Hindu and non-Muslim speaking districts. In 1945 fall, and increasing is then after World War, it has become very clear the Congress faltered, then the British start patronizing the Muslim League, because Muslim League solidly stood with the British. The Congress wavered, and they were not sure whether to support British or seriously oppose them when the Quit India movement started. So finally British decided to favor the Jinnah. Jinnah was raised as a prominent leader, and at the time the prominent leader of the Punjab Congress was Sikandar Hayat Khan, and he died around about 1945 December or so. Then the ascendancy of Jinnah started in Punjab. Punjab is the very key in Pakistan formation. Pakistan means excuse me, Punjab here represent Afghania, that is essentially Peshawar, Pakistan region, and Kashmir, and yes, representing the Sindh, and Stan means a generic term for the territory, Watan, land or Bhumi or Desh. And Finally, increasing Islamic aggression made the Congress leadership totally shaken, and they have taken to a concept called ahimsa. That is essentially a high-sounding veneer for Congress leaderships to pusillanimity. That is the cowardice. And Islamic aggression and British were very anxious to quit Bharat after 1946. Naval meetings in Bombay, army was not in their control. The new Prime Minister of Britain, Sir Clement Attlee, was not interested in taking the responsibility of governing the foreign nations, and the Americans and a lot of other leaders were against the concept of colonialism. So many things came into picture, and British were anxious to quit Bharat, and they essentially played the spectator role, and Congress leadership took to cowardice under ahimsa or non-violence and those type of high-sounding things under the Gandhiji's leadership. And eventually it was decided that we cannot face the Muslim Islamic aggression, and Congress leadership came in, and partition of India came, and partition of Punjab also came as a part. Cyril Radcliffe was appointed as a judge to bifurcate Muslim and non-Muslim districts. Remember, the partition of India was not done on Muslim or Hindu basis. Muslims really doesn't care. Everybody was a kafir and they are the believers. Islamic ideology we'll discuss about other time. So Muslim and non-Muslim basis. Anybody who is not a Muslim, Hindu, Sikh or Jain, or some microscopic Parsis or Christians, Isais were all dumped together, and Radcliffe Award was given. So that is in a sense about finally the British Punjab was dissolved into East Punjab, Purbi Punjab, and West Punjab, Paschim Punjab. And we'll look at other aspects of Punjab in later. So what would we discuss today is essentially a British Punjab as a prominent province and a political entity that was constituted after Second Anglo-Sikh War, survived nearly for 1849 to 1947, more or less 100 years. British Punjab, we discussed about the Sheri Punjab, the great Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and his building up the Punjab step by step into a Khalsa Raj from a small Sukerchakia Misl, and the death of Maharaja in 1839 June, and anarchy that followed, and eventual assassination of nearly 4 or 5 important prominent leaders, and Maharaja Sheikh Pratap Singh and so on. Treaty of Lahore and Treaty of Amritsar, that is secession of Jammu and Kashmir to Gulab Singh Dogra, and Bhyrowal Treaty, that is stationing the British armed forces in the Khalsa Sarkar till the Maharaja attains the majority age, and second war broke down, then Lahore Treaty and annexation of Punjab in 1849, and the Lawrence brothers, the senior Henry Lawrence and junior John Lawrence. John Lawrence later became Governor General of India after the demise of office by Lord Canning. That means Dalhousie followed by Lord Canning. Lord Canning times we had the rebellion, and he demitted office 1865 or so, 1865 to 1870 or so. John Lawrence became the Governor General, and he was the Governor of British Punjab for some time, then later Governor General of India, Viceroy's representative, Viceroy Crown's representative, and there was a 5 divisions, Lahore division and Rawalpindi division, Multan division, and in the eastern side Delhi division, or sometimes called Ambala division, and Jalandhar division. These 2 divisions, that is Haryana division, Delhi division, or Jalandhar division, came awarded to India, and Western all the 3 divisions except and Amritsar district and Gurdaspur district went back to Pakistan. And the Sipahi mutiny, the Bengal army, that is Hindustani Sipahis and Punjabi Sipahis, were raised, and they were helpful in tiding the rebellion. Then the large-scale building of canal colonies, and most of the lands were given to Sikh community. And British decided to consolidate the Sikhs as a bulwark of British Empire in India, and as an antidote for any future rebellion, and also as a separate community from Hindus, because they feared if Sikhs were a part of Hindu community, they will pose a serious challenge in future. So that is the consolidation of the Khalsa, with giving the jobs in the army, after retirement giving the jobs in the canal colony districts, essentially pampering a minority community, and encouraging the Sikh intellectuals to give extensive talks, write the books, and saying that Sikhs are different from Hindus. Hum Hindu Nahin Hai is such a prominent book written by the Chief Minister of Naba, which is a Pulkiana princely state and east southern side of River Sutlej near Patiala. And Sikh consolidation, the Hindu intellectual failure is overall the great failure, that still intellectual poverty among the Hindus. And rise of the Muslim League, and detachment of the frontier province, that is the Peshawar province, in 1901, at the addition of the Delhi province from the United Provinces at the same time. And we also discussed of the prominent political parties. The Unionist parties is a generic constitutionalist party that has a Muslim community, Sikh community, and Hindu community. Their prominent leaders were Mian Fazli Hussain and Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan and Sir Chottu Ram and Kijar Hayat Khan, and prominent Akali leaders Tara Singh, and Congress leaders like Lala Lajpat Rai and so on. And 1945 polls, and there was a split verdict, and Muslim League became a very prominent political party but could not form the government, and Sikandar Hayat Khan died around about 1945. Afterwards, rapid rise of Jinnah in the political vacuum that existed in Punjab, and increasing Islamic aggression, large-scale riots throughout the country. And Congress leadership was totally benumbed because it was addicted to a facile concept called ahimsa for a lot of years and decades, to cover up their Congress pusillanimity under the high-sounding veneer. And British anxiety took it India because they felt they cannot govern the country anymore, and they essentially played a spectator role at that time, with some passive and active assistance to the League, because the League helped them, stood solid behind them during the World War II time. And finally, Radcliffe Award and partition of Punjab into East Punjab and West Punjab, according to the Radcliffe line, that the territory east of River Ravi were Purbi Punjab, the territory west of Ravi was Paschim Punjab. That means the British Punjab as a prominent political entity like Madras Presidency or Bombay Presidency, United Provinces, Agra and Oudh, Bengal Presidency or Assam and so on, finally dismembered in 1947. That is in a sense about British Punjab that existed 1849 and 49. Thank you very much for your listening, and I appreciate your comments, compliments and criticisms, and keep looking for more presentations on Punjab. We'll look at them soon. And this is J. Reddy, your facilitator in South Asia Maps educational channel. We bring the Indian heritage and culture and civilization in the form of graphs and maps and icons to you. And these pictures are mostly from the Google search and essentially mini atlases. Credit belong to them, and just have redrawn them here. And thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye.